Your brand may be staying on top of current trends, but are you agile enough to stay relevant, resilient, and successful as customers, competition, and the world continues to change at a breakneck pace? I'm thrilled to share the newly revised version of my first book, The Agile Brand. I'm calling it The Agile Brand Revisited. It's been updated to reflect our continually changing world, and it provides 7 principles that form the backbone of an agile brand, offering detailed insights and actionable steps for incorporating them into your business strategy. This is the book that started it all, and I'm excited to share it with you. It's now available in print and digital formats and available everywhere. Learn more by going to the Agile Brand Guide website at www.agilebrandguide.com. Welcome to Season 4 of The Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom, where we discuss business agility through customer experience, employee experience, and digital transformation. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at gregkihlstrom.com and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, now available on Amazon and other retailers. My name is Greg Kihlstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile Brand podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the value of branding and a strong brand strategy. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Stephen Houraghan, freelancer turned brand strategist and the founder of Brand Master Academy. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about this with you. Why don't we start by you giving a little background on yourself, as well as what led to what you're currently doing?
Yeah, no problem at all. I'm based in Sydney, Australia. I'm actually originally from Ireland, but I've been here about 20 years. And my traditional education background is in finance. I was actually in the stock market for a while, but I made a shift, a little over 10 years ago or so to get into something that I was quite passionate about, which was design and branding. And I started my own agency after a few years of experience, and I kind of noticed in the market there was a lot of changes going on at the time. I don't know if you remember when Freelancer and Odesk, they all came in. So The market was in this kind of strange transition place. And I was looking to what I was going to be able to do differently, because I saw a massive price decline in what I was able to charge for my work, the expectation of clients, because branding seemed to be getting cheaper in the marketplace, but at the same time, it was also creating this disconnect as to what branding really was. So I kind of shifted my focus to what I would call more core branding and the strategy behind branding, because I felt that was a massive gap that was missing. And, that led me on a path of discovery, and it changed everything I did for my clients. And I saw a real uptick in what I was able to do, the response I was getting from my clients, because I was feeling this need that they didn't really know that they had, but once they started to hear about it, it started to click with them. So brand strategy became kind of this obsession for me, and I built out these frameworks to use with my clients. And over time, I started to share that with my friends, record content, and that kind of grew into this program and this academy that I now have today, where I teach branding professionals, entrepreneurs, how to integrate strategy into the brands that they're building. So they're not just building these visual identities. They're not just building these facades of brands. There's actually some substance behind them and some strategy as to how to connect with the audience. So that's my short journey, and that's where my focus is on today within that Brand Master Academy realm.
That's great. Well, yeah, and today we're gonna talk about the value of branding and brand strategy. And so you touched on this already, but just to kind of go back to that point, once something becomes technically easier to do, often there comes a rush of competition. And so, while it may be easier to find or even design a logo due to technology and tools, it's definitely not the same thing as creating a brand or a brand strategy. And you touched on this as well. So what do potential clients need to understand about this difference between, again, just getting a logo for a few dollars versus brand and brand strategy?
Yeah, and I think to kind of answer that question, I'll kind of talk about the perfect storm that was created with these market conditions. So you had the digital transformation that made it so easy for people to get online and to create businesses, to sell their services. At the same time, when we had this influx of designers, self-taught designers who were able to download Illustrator and then, sell their services without any barrier to entry, we had all of these entrepreneurs coming into the marketplace saying, I want to start a business, I need a brand. So you had these self-taught designers saying, hey, we offer branding, and these green entrepreneurs say, hey, I need branding. So you just had this environment where, there wasn't a lot of expertise or know-how or knowledge or education into what branding actually was. So then we had this environment where the logo became king. A logo was a brand. Yeah. But really, when we think about businesses, when we think about who we do business with, or the way that we choose the brands that we do business with, we don't choose brands based on a logo. We don't choose the businesses to serve our needs based on how they look. Right. We choose brands in the same way that we choose our friends. And this is all human instinct. We scan our environment constantly for threats and for dangers. And this is just part of our DNA. And we look for connections. We look for reasons to trust. We look for survival reasons. And when we connect with brands, when we do business with brands, it's because they have connected with us in a way that goes beyond a visual. They have spoken to us in a way that, resonates with us, in a language that resonates with us. They've spoken to our desires or our fears, and they've done it in a way that makes us feel that they know exactly who we are, the path we're on, the goals we're trying to achieve, and the challenges that are standing in front of us. And they facilitate that bridge. They facilitate this crossover from where we are now to where we want to be. And a logo and a brand identity is not going to do that for you. A brand that understands who their audience is, the challenges that they have and where they want to get to, and then strategically speak to that journey in a way that resonates with them, they're the brands that we do business with. And that is the premise of strategy, really understanding who that audience is, what they want, and how to give it to them in a way that's going to resonate with who they are as a person. So that, in a nutshell, for me is strategy. It's about making those connections, and it's not about looking good with a visual identity.
Yeah. I love that description there. So let's talk about what you do at the Brandmaster Academy. Who's the target audience for the Academy, and what are the types of things that participants learn and understand from it?
Yeah, so it really came organically from the path of discovery that I went on. I had all of these challenges. I was in a marketplace where, I really wasn't standing out. There was so much noise in the marketplace. I didn't know what positioning was, but I knew that I had a problem because it was so noisy out there. You had all of these people selling these services, and it was very, very difficult to stand out. So, really kind of going on that path of discovery opened up this world into positioning and how to position yourself effectively. And as I said, that really grew into this organic framework that I put together. So essentially, I created this framework for myself, first and foremost, to learn how to stand out in the market, how to create a compelling offer, how to speak to my audience in a way that's going to resonate with them. But in creating that framework, I created this perfect product that my clients actually needed. And then I began sharing that with other people other than just my clients. So initially, I created this for myself, and my initial target audience was myself 5 years ago. So that would have been designers who were starting out, who were trying to get some traction in the market. But it's kind of grown a little bit more from there, because it's not just designers that need to understand brands, how to build brands strategically and brand strategy. It's any brand builder. It's professional brand builders. It could be copywriters, marketing managers, but it's also those entrepreneurs who are coming into the market and really want to own their brand for themselves. They don't want to outsource, the brand, because they are the brand leaders. They need to manage that brand. They're the ones that are going to bring that brand to success. So understanding what the brand is about, the fabric of the brand, and how to communicate that is the job of a brand leader. So as I said, it was originally graphic designers, professional brand builders, but it's also those entrepreneurs who want to own their brand as well.
Yeah, and it seems like in some, someone that graduates with a degree in marketing or something, they probably have some of this, at least the basics covered. But you're reaching a lot of people that probably are getting into branding from, whether it's from a graphic design standpoint, in which, yes, they may be a little more focused on the logo to start, or just business owners and stuff. So how is the curriculum fairly broad in terms of, who it targets, as far as, the starting point, I guess, of where they enter?
Yeah. Look, that's a good question, and to kind of go back to your point earlier on, some people come into branding because they've graduated from university with a marketing degree, but the way they teach marketing today is still the same way they have taught marketing, back in the late 70s and 80s for the last 40 years. And within that philosophy and that idea, branding has not evolved within the education system as it has in the real world. The way they taught branding back in the 80s was that branding was this small subset of marketing. They would spend a little bit of time on what branding was, and most of the time on the 4 Ps of branding, all of that, those traditional concepts. But since then, branding has evolved into this overarching discipline that governs not just marketing decisions, but business decisions as well. And, the traditional education hasn't really kept up with that. So branding has become this blind spot for everyone. It's become a blind spot for marketing professionals. It's become a blind spot for designers, for entrepreneurs. And, really that's what Brandmaster Academy addresses. That's what I found when I went on this path of discovery. I was like, I have not come across a framework that breaks down what branding is from the very foundations of, how we connect as humans to, the complex studies that have happened over the last 10 to 15 years within neuroscience and how we make those buying decisions. So the curriculum, the flagship course, Brandmaster Secrets, there's 150 videos, there's 25 hours of content, and it really goes deep, and it starts from a foundational level, going back to where branding came from, and it goes deep into that science and that psychology, and how to develop out a strategy to speak to your clients, considering what we know today in the way people make decisions. So it is broad from the point of view that it covers the foundations, it covers those fundamental principles, but it also goes deep as well. So anybody coming into Brandmaster Secrets, you could come into this program with no knowledge of branding, with no knowledge of marketing. And by the end of this program, you would have a better understanding of what branding is than 95% of people on the planet. So it's, it really does give you that foundational grounding, and it is targeted towards people who want to become professional brand strategists, who want to turn what they're doing, turn that tactical work, that design work, that copywriting work into more strategic work rather than tactical, so that they're not building or creating a slice of the pie, they're developing the whole pie. So it is very foundational in terms of giving you that grounding, but it also goes deep so that you come out the other side as a true expert.
That's great. And so to talk about those individuals, those people that, may have gone through your academy, or that are professionals in branding and brand strategy. As we talked about at the top of the show, there's a lot of competition. Some of it is stiff competition in terms of, really good branders, brand strategists, and some, let's say, inexpensive ways of accomplishing less than ideal goals. But, how do the good ones set themselves apart? And, how do they stand out?
Are we talking about how do the good brands set themselves apart?
The good brand strategists, those making a living creating brands.
Yeah. So it's in the words that we use, it's in what we say, and it's in the challenges that we address with our clients. So if you have somebody coming to you looking for a logo or a website, well then they have self-diagnosed their problems. Now we don't go to doctors and say, hey doctor, my wrist is hurting. I reckon I've got this. Can you give me some pills for this?
Right.
We go to a doctor with an open mind as to what our problem might be, and we assume the position of patient. We know that we don't know what is wrong with us, and this doctor is positioned to tell us what's wrong, and we give them that level of trust. So great brand strategists are those who approach their clients in the same way. If they have somebody coming to them, whether or not they have self-diagnosed themselves or they are actually an open patient, the way to get to the problem that needs to be solved is by asking really, really good questions and being curious. Now, in doing this, it's going to achieve a few things. First of all, you're going to understand the other person and what their needs are. You're going to understand their business, and you're going to arm yourself with that useful information to then make decisions later on, or to provide advice, or to just give them the right guidance. It's also going to make them feel understood and connected to you, because in just asking those questions, they feel heard. They feel understood because they have the opportunity to speak and open up about things that they have probably just internalized up until this point. We don't tend to talk to our partners about our considerations or our deep fears or challenges about business. We might speak to them on a surface level, but when you ask your clients these specific questions and it gives them a chance to verbalize, probably for the first time, what they're thinking or what their vision is, then, you're really giving them that platform to feel understood. And if they feel understood as humans, that's what we want. If we feel understood, we feel connected to the person who is giving us that understanding. And the third thing that it does is it gives you this sense of authority. Just by asking questions, you are assuming the role of the leader, because we tend to trust those who are the ones asking us the questions, from our parents to our teachers to our doctors. Just by asking those questions, they assume this authority, and we are on the spot to provide them with the best answers. And this comes from school. We want to give the best answer to the question that's being asked. And when somebody asks us a question, we assume that kind of that student role, and the other person is the leader. So just in asking questions, just in being curious, it accomplishes so much. It arms you with so much information. It makes your client feel understood, and it gives you that sense of authority. So that is by far the number one tip I would give to someone who wants to become a really good brand strategist.
That's great. Well, one last thing is from a trends perspective. What are you? Certainly, you're keeping up with things and aligning what you're teaching in the academy with the latest and greatest out there. What trends are you seeing in the world of branding, and that brand strategists should be anticipating and keeping in mind in the months ahead?
Yeah, well, look, the biggest trend that I'm seeing is really on the client side. The client is more educated today than they were, even 5 years ago, because there are so many influencers out there who are talking about brand. They're talking about the value of brand, and they're not talking about logos. They're not talking about, a visual identity and a good looking website. They're talking about relationships. They're talking about connecting. So clients are open now to the idea that their brand is more than just a logo. It's more than just a website. And in fact, they're, in a lot of cases, they're coming to branding professionals and strategists with the expectation that they are going to have a much deeper level of knowledge than just saying, hey, why don't we do your logo this way, or why don't we do your website that way? So, they're really open to so much more about branding, from, the concepts of positioning and differentiation strategy. How are we going to be different? What reasons are we giving our clients or our customers to choose us over our competitors? Brand personality as well. how are we showing up in the market? How are we displaying our attributes? Because remember what I said before, Greg, it's in those attributes, it's in the way we connect with other people, with other humans, that we're attracted to brands as well. So how are we showing up? Are we showing up as this corporate entity using this corporate language that sounds very robotic? Or are we turning up sounding like a genuine person, like there's real people behind this brand? You know, they're either funny or they're rugged or they're adventurous or they have a point of view or a sense of humor. You know, how are we showing up to the market with our personality for our brand? And then how are we communicating our brand as well? What messages are we putting out there into the marketplace? What stories are we telling? And you know, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, because each and every one of these goes so much deeper. Just storytelling as an example, we are so much more open to story than we are factual information, because this is how our ancestors have passed on, you know, information for generations before they had books and complex language, and they would just tell stories. So our brains are wired to be open to stories. And when we hear stories that are aligned with our own journey and the problems that we have, the desires that we have, the goals that we want to achieve, and, you know, we can see ourselves in those stories, that's when we open ourselves up to messages that resonate with us. So there are so many different levels when it comes to branding and how strategists can express themselves. But I definitely feel that there is this trend that we've been on now for at least 10 years, but really only in the last 5 years, it's starting to gain up a head of steam that, you know, entrepreneurs coming into the market, they're not as wet behind the ears as they used to be when, you know, the digital transformation just happened and people just came into the market for the first time. They're coming in understanding what branding is about. They're coming in with, you know, a sense of personal development and self-development and, you know, professional development, because there's so much information out there, and they, if it's of interest to them, then they're going to arm themselves with that knowledge. And what real branding is, what true branding is, what brand strategy is, there's so much information out there, and they're open to it now. So we're moving past this world of a brand is just a logo, and we're having to deal with these clients who just want logos. There are still plenty out there, but we are moving more into a place where it's becoming this general consensus and this general knowledge that we need to actually understand the customers that we're trying to connect with, and we need to build a brand around that customer and create it in a way that's going to resonate with them.
Yeah. No, I love that. Love that perspective on it. Well, Stephen, thanks so much for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to learn more about the Brandmaster Academy and to keep up with what you're doing?
Yep. The simplest way is brandmasteracademy.com. You can also find us on YouTube. If you're looking to get into brand strategy for the first time, you know, we've got over 200 videos there on YouTube. There's like 30,000 plus followers at the moment. And, you know, if you want to get a solid grounding on brand strategy without investing in anything, then I'd suggest jumping on to YouTube, but you can find that through brandmasteracademy.com anyway. And there's a very valuable free download there, which is the Pro Brand Strategy Blueprint, to give you all of the elements that you need to consider when building your brand strategy for the first time.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again. I'd like to thank Stephen Houraghan, founder of Brandmaster Academy, for joining the show. Thanks for listening to The Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom. Talk with you next week.
Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.theagilebrand.show. To get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, visit my website at gregkihlstrom.com. Until next week, stay agile.